Over the 10 years Sankofa Center has been doing our outreach program in Ghana, we've experienced a lot of complications, and I think it's really important for everyone to know about in consideration of the HIV 101. First of all, abstinence is one of the ways of preventing HIV, but sometimes it's very difficult for people to abstain from sex. Sometimes they don't want to abstain from sex. Sometimes they're forced to have sex. Sometimes they want to have sex. So abstinence is a great tool that we try to promote in terms of HIV prevention, but it's also something that we have to realistically look at on a case-by-case scenario and see whether or not that person wants to be abstinent. Another issue is the issue of being faithful to one partner. When you're in a culture where there's multiple relationships, there's multiple sexual relationships, and there's not a lot of dialogue or communication regarding that, it becomes very difficult to use being faithful to one partner as a way to prevent HIV infection. One person might be faithful, the other person might not be faithful. Both people might be faithful at the time, but then, years ago they were infected with HIV, but they never were tested, so they don't know their status. Being faithful to one partner is a good tool when you're 100% sure that your sex partner is not infected with HIV and that your partner is actually faithful. And that becomes very problematic when you're dealing with other people who may not be faithful, may not know their own status. Okay, another issue is the issue of condom use. Quite frankly, using a condom doesn't feel as good as the raw sex. I mean, everyone knows that. Everyone shouldn't be disillusioned by that fact. However, having raw sex can lead to HIV infection versus using a condom prevents you from HIV infection. If the condom is worn properly and doesn't break, it prevents those fluids from getting into your body. But getting people to really use condoms is a challenge in a place of in the world where there are very little resources. For example, there might not be condoms available in the town that you live in or the village that you live in. Or there might be condoms available, but they're out of date, or they're of poor quality. Or your partner may not want you to use condom because there's a cultural notion that if you use a condom, then you don't really love that person. So the issue of breastfeeding, when you're an HIV positive mother, the issue of breastfeeding a child is very problematic. For one, HIV lives inside of the breast milk. So when you're breastfeeding your baby, you're essentially breastfeeding them with HIV inside the milk, and they can get infected. However, because of the social stigma in Africa, it's very difficult for a woman with a small child to not breastfeed her baby when other people around her might say, like, why aren't you breastfeeding your child? Your baby's hungry. Out of peer pressure and out of the strong social stigma, she might be compelled to breastfeed her child, thus giving the child HIV. So as health educators, we try to encourage mothers to avoid breastfeeding their children. But then sometimes they don't have the money to go and buy formula. So it's very problematic, and it has to be on a case-by-case situation on what to really do. So there's a lot of things that are happening in different parts of the world which make all of the prevention methods really problematic. But we have to focus on a case-by-case scenario, like I said before, to see what is the best option for you. Should you abstain from sex? Is that possible? Could you be faithful to your partner? Do you know your partner's status? Does your partner know their status? Have they been tested many times over the past year? Do you know if they go out and have sex with other people? Would they be honest to you and tell you if they did? Would they tell you if they had sex with someone else and the condom broke, or they didn't use the condom at all? These are all questions that we have to have people pose. They have a realistic view of what their prevention method can be.